G'day, hobbyists. It is AOS Coach here, and we are talking all things Kharadron Overlords. We are here with Ken Krohn himself, the pirate of the sky, the man who you almost went 6-0 at CanCon. Almost, you almost top table CanCon when KO was at its worst,
and still playing them in the current meta. Yeah, I will always love steampunk airships.
I think you've actually been on my show every season. You've gone season 1 Kharadron Overlords, second edition Kharadron Overlords, and now we're here third edition Kharadron Overlords. You are committed to the skies, but Alex or Alexander Krohn, I'm calling you Krohn because you are the man of CanCon, has been playing Kharadron Overlords for so long now. You're one of many of the Aethercast podcast, which is a Kharadron Overlords podcast, and more importantly, just an excellent overall player who always is doing very well in the competitive scene with KO. So I thought if anyone could help me understand how Kharadron Overlords has come out of third edition and how are you thinking about the build right now, I couldn't think of a better person. So this is our discussion. Let's learn how. I want to learn how KO works, because for me, I imagine my first interpretation of Kharadron Overlords is that you might have lost more than other people have gained. The board has changed. Some of the rerolls have disappeared. Some of the rules have kind of come about. But how have you generally found Kharadron Overlords in this first 2 months?
I think one of the really big changes is this universal +1 save has really impacted armies that really like that Rend 1. So it's Kharadron Overlords have pretty much across the board have Rend 1 guns, which really powerful in second edition, a lot less impactful in third edition. So I'm really feeling like we're moving out of that initial alpha strike meta that was dominating second edition and more into a very control based meta. So a lot of KO possibly doesn't hit as hard as it used to, but there's so much that they can do with maneuvering and with abilities that affect opponents' movement and can box. You can really box armies in. That still give them a lot of play in third edition.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I first look at third edition, especially now, which is the battle pack, which is focused on Gur, right? You have no monsters. You don't really have any wizards to focus on for metamorphosis. The battle tactics are giving you bonus victory points for having monsters. And like just general, and even like just the board size, so being able to fly high and find pots of the board, I imagine it's a lot of like just negatives against KO. Are you feeling that, or do you think there's other opportunities or other things that you're building around?
Having no monsters is really a blessing and a curse, I feel. So yeah, yes, you can't get the extra points for having monsters, and there's one of the battle tactics that's sitting a monster on objective that you just can't do. But it also means your opponent can't get extra points for killing monsters on your side. So you're already denying them that. And I think there's another battle tactic that is kill an enemy monster. Yeah. Which again, so the KO player is losing out on being able to do a battle tactic, and your opponent's losing out on being able to do a battle tactic. Smaller board, you definitely notice that there's less space to move and to put your ships, but it also it's harder for the enemy to screen out your shooting as a Kharadron Overlord. So there's the deployment zones are a lot in a lot of missions a lot shallower, which means even if you have a screen at the front of your deployment zone and your big monster all the way at the back, there's not actually enough space there to stop a boat from being moving within 3 inches of your front screen and then unloading everything it's got into that back monster, screen or no screen.
And by the way, I'm not trying to be all negative about KO. I just like, for me initially when I was looking at some of the things, I'm like, oh, these don't seem very positive. But then I think about other things, right? You know, you've got Unleash Hell. So you've got a whole bunch of options to unleash hell to your opponent, and you've got a lot of shooting options.
It's pretty nice. Some KO units get better when there's an enemy within 3 inches. So the Unleash Hell on Thunderers, for instance, you have a big block of Thunderers. Someone charges them. They unleash hell and they get +1 to all their shots as well. So it actually ups the firepower.
I imagine that I also might even make you think about different loadouts with your people as well, especially things like having more volley guns be able to do a lot of damage, or I don't know. Like I guess what I'm hearing is it's actually not as bad as some people might have expected for KO.
Yeah, so I mean, yes, we've definitely gotten hit with some negatives, but I think overall KO are still in a really good spot. It's just a different spot than what we're used to.
No, and we were talking offline before that. It's actually good. You know, you have been playing KO since like ever since I've known you, which is right at the start of KO. You've always played it, right? And I remember even talking to you very early on. You were saying that I think initially KO played like Tau, then it moved to a Dark Elder style. And the way that, you know, back in the day, it was all about having all big, all the balloon boys having your Endron riggers and things like that. But
yeah, it was
then
just
it kind of
these gun
evolved.
lines of Arkanauts.
Yeah, and even like towards the end of the second edition, it was then all about things like having lots of ironclads. So, you know, the meta evolving has always been a positive thing, and it means that you get to play with new toys. Unfortunately, it's been how many years now that Brock is still not any good. Sorry, Brock.
He's still, he's just not good. He's just not worth the points. Like at this point, if you get Brock, he's cool. He's got a beard. He's got mustache guns.
He's got a top hat. Like he's amazing. But when
like
we
this giant mecha suit.
Look,
strapped to a balloon.
We've got Marathi in the meta. We've got Archeon. We've got Nagash. When is it Age of Brock? I think. When is it Age of Brock? One
day when I don't know what he needs. He needs something. He needs more punch, or he needs more defense. He needs something.
Maybe strikes terror on the beard. But what have you found going from second edition to third edition? You've already talked a little bit about how some of your lists are kind of evolving. Like, what are some of the big things that you've learnt from jumping editions?
Oh, definitely. So, the initial tactics of second edition, which was, you take 20 Thunderers, you put them in a boat, you jump the boat forward, and you just unload, kill half the enemy army. Definitely, that specific build does not work because, first of all, Thunderers can't be 20-man units. You can still take 2 units of 10 Thunderers. But then the efficiency of these buffs, you're only actually getting one of the units to +1 to hit and to wound. It does not put out as much firepower as it used to do.
Yeah.
And
by the way, for people who don't know why that is coming through the reinforcement rule. So a player can only reinforce a unit or the units in their army up to 4 times at the moment in 2,000 points. So how many are there? 5 men?
They start at 5 man, and then they're not battle line natively.
Yeah. Okay.
The only way to one of the sub factions, Barrack Nar, will make them battle line, but I think that unfortunately that's also pretty much the only good thing about Barrack Nar is the ability to make Thunderers battle line, because that gets them up to 15 now. It's the Wild West out there. Like, people are coming up with so many different opinions. I love this period in time right now where we just can. So much is being thrown at the wall, and we're trying so many different things, and it's just figuring out what works and what doesn't.
Well,
Like, it's so much fun.
I was looking at the tournament list recently, and Bill Souza Flesh Eater Courts won a major event, like a 100-player event. We've had Slanesh in the top 5. We've had ogres, and ogres come first at a 70-player event. So, and this is not Stonehorn ogres. This is your Dadbot ogres. So you're right. Gutbusters came first in a 70-player event. So, like it is a bit of a Wild West right now, but we're starting to see a little bit of the meta evolving. And it seems to me at the moment, at least right now, it's all going down a very hero hammer route. Marathi, Teclis, Gotrek, Archeon, Nagash. We're starting to see these superheroes, but you don't have any. You don't have the big bad superheroes that obviously you can get Gotrek, right?
We can get Gotrek. I've seen lists around. One list that did actually really well in the Battle for Copenhagen, I believe, that featured a Gotrek and 2 Ironclads. Like, we've gone from first edition with no Ironclads to third edition where we're just throwing like the entire fleet.
That's almost like 1,500 points, isn't it? That'd be close to 12 to 1,500 points.
Yeah, no, it is. That's like the whole list is Gotrek, I believe. I'm not 100% sure even how it works, but I think you put 2 Ironclads on a flank and then funnel them into the Ironclads using Gotrek, and the 2 Ironclads just putting out that amount of firepower to wipe out what they can.
It's crazy, but you're right. Like, it's a bit of a Wild West. How do you think KO goes at the moment with some of these superheroes? Because you're right. Like, there's a lot of Rend in KO.
A lot of Rend 1, which just doesn't punch through. There's a bit of Rend 2 in the cannons and the occasional sprinkle of Rend 3, but a lot of it's Rend 1. So at least the way I've been looking at how KO work and playing my games is I'm pretty much ignoring the big hero. And there's a hero was oft overlooked and underused in 2nd edition called the Navigator, and so he provides a dispel. He doesn't cast spells, but he can unbind them. He makes it both a bit faster, and he's got this really cool ability right now that he picks 1 flying unit in your opponent's army within 36 inches of the navigator, so wherever really, and on a 3+, that unit's movement is halved. And on a 6, it also takes D3 mortal wounds, but it's the thing that halves the enemy movement, and so the way it's worded is it halves the movement characteristic of an enemy unit, which means if you took more of these navigators, they actually would stack. So right now, I'm just stapling 2 navigators to every list I've got, which is currently a 190 point investment to then essentially almost guarantee like an Archaon or a Morathi is moving 7 inches and occasionally 3.5 inches. He's scary, but if he's moving slower than Gotrek and I'm just popping around with these boats, what's he going to do?
Well, you've made a really interesting point as well, because something that people might not have remembered or might have missed is Broken Realms Be'lakor, which came out just before 3rd edition, did give you some additional triumphs for was it your Aether Chemist, your Navigator, and your
Endron Master.
Endron Master, yeah. So you got a couple of it. How have you found those in the new edition, given that the core triumphs have changed?
So yeah, I mean the Be'lakor triumphs really affect these heroes. Really affect a boat that the hero is stationed on. They all seem to be revolving around the hero is in a boat, and then the hero can use this triumph to positively affect the boat. So the chemist could give one weapon on the boat. So for an ironclad, you'd want to probably go it on the carbines, which have just the most damage output. It gives them reroll ones to wound. When normally he can only do that to infantry squads. Navigators give the boat an extra d6 movement, which is it's all right. It's very good if you've loaded your boat up in such a way that it can't fly high anymore.
Yeah.
It can turn an ironclad, which now moves 5 inches, into a relatively zippy, like 15 inches, because it can run and still shoot if it's got an admiral on it. And the Ender Master, he can make the boat blow up if it dies, which is fun. So the boat goes down, all your dudes are piling out, you just blow the magazine. Everyone around it takes mortal wounds.
Which is actually really important right now, especially in the current meta where we're seeing things like Blood Knights, for example. I've had a couple of games so far with the Soul Black Gravelords, and having a unit of Blood Knights on a 2-up armor save using all out defense or Mystic Shield can really be tough if you don't have mortal wounds. So I know for me, I've been thinking about where can I get mortal wounds or a high volume of quality attacks. Because I can't just rely on Ren 2, small amounts of Ren 2 damage. I've got to be really specific because I can get a +1 to my save from Mystic Shield. I've mentioned cover. Their Finest Hour, which is the hero ability, gives you +1 to save as well. So there are interesting ways to avoid rend in the game at the moment.
Yeah. KO really just don't have the ability to put out that many mortal wounds. We've got the drill cannons that have it's a single shotgun. You can take 1 per 3 balloon boys, and on a 5+ on a 6+ to hit, it does 3 mortal wounds instead. And they are a bit spammable. You can put them onto gun haulers, and on a gun hauler procs on a 5+ as opposed to a 6+ because it's a slightly bigger gun. But that's really about it, except for that one artifact that you can put on the dirigible suit Ender Master, who on a 2+ you do a mortal wound, just keep rolling that dice until you get a 1. That's a fun artifact, but it is a once per game kind of thing.
So how do you handle that? How would you handle? Because I imagine there's a lot of players like you are sitting there going, "How do I handle these things without the mortal wound output that some armies are doing right now?" I know, I'm tempting. I'm playing Daughters of Cain at the moment, and I'm resisting taking bow snakes. It's just something I don't want to do. But I'm finding that I don't have a lot of mortal wounds outside of the bow snakes, and I'm relying on prayers like Curse, and that's quite a short range. So how are you handling that, or how are you thinking about coming up against some quite heavy armored saves?
I suppose again it'd just be this. So first of all, it's this control where you just use your navigators, you use your own maneuverability to just stay out of reach of these big units. You block them out with just like lines of Arkanauts to kind of square them off of certain sections of the board, and you just they have their Death Star, their big armor, their big unkillable thing, and you just ignore that, shoot all the chaff, and actually start playing, like focusing hard on just objectives, doing your battle tactics, and just winning on points. It's this game of keep away, essentially.
Speaking of keep away as well, what probably would work in your favor is the new command ability Redeploy that allows you to move out of combat, or not out of combat, but if someone's going to charge you, using that CP to move D6 to make that charge harder. And then if they do charge you, you either unleash hell, or if you got boats, you can drop those bombs onto them, right?
So the problem with redeploy is that it says once, if you activate redeploy, you can't shoot in that turn. Yes. So you aren't actually allowed to redeploy and then unleash hell.
But you could drop bombs.
You can. That's D3 mortal wounds. but that's pretty much all they'll do. It
I'm trying to
combos
be positive.
really.
I'm
I'm
trying to be
sorry.
positive. I'm like, oh yeah, you got the bombs. You're like, nah,
No.
D3's rubbish.
Redeploy works really nicely with a sub faction in this book. Oh, that happened. A minor earthquake. Works really nicely with a sub faction in this book. Again, mostly ignored in second edition. Now super popular in third edition. Barrack Nar is the new star of Kharadron Overlords. So Barrack Nar gives you a whole raft of things that I am super in love with. So first of all, it gives you access to a fantastic relic, which really plays into this whole control meta I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I want to pick you up on that a little bit later. I want to talk a bit more about control, but you've got your combo. Keep talking.
Right. With redeploy, so the enemy comes close. They're 3 inches away, and you redeploy an average of 3 inches. Now you're 6 inches away. This relic gives you start of every charge phase. Pick an enemy unit, halve the charge roll for that unit. Now we're 6 inches away.
Yeah.
Good luck rolling that 12.
I've played against something similar in the Khorne Demon Prince has that aura that does the same thing. You have charging and run rolls, and it just makes charging so much harder. And you're right, you then do the redeploy, and if you can get like a 3, 4, or 5, it makes it near impossible outside of a couple of bonuses to the charge, and you've avoided combat. So it's a really good call out.
And there's ways to play around it, because I know Destiny dice, I think, can't be modified. So if Archaon's coming out, no?
I don't think so.
So technically, yeah, you have an Archaon, a Zench Archaon, and he comes towards you. I wouldn't even start that combo, because he's going to just go 12.
Yeah.
Or, 6. And I can't halve it because you can't modify them. So he just goes, I charge 6. Done.
Yeah. And by the way, just for you hats, so with your battle line and reinforcing, so your troops can be all reinforced once. So in a traditional 2,000 point battle, you get 4 reinforcement points. So if you were to get, let's say, your engine riggers, they come in units of 3, and I'm looking at Krohn to make sure that I say the right things. But your balloon boys come in units of 3, right? So if you haven't got them as battle line, it means you're only allowed to reinforce them up to a unit of 6, and that's 1 reinforcement point. So if you just take the minimum size of 3, no reinforcement points. If they're battle line, so I don't know, I'm sure there's a way to get the balloon boys as battle line, but if you do that with your your engine master or whatever it is as your general, and it activates your engine riggers as battle line, then you'd be allowed to reinforce them twice and got to unit of 9. And before Krohn says anything, the other consideration is what's it called? Coherency rules. Coherency has changed a little bit, and it does make especially larger bases, those 32 mil bases, and even anything larger than that, quite hard, especially to get into combat. So speaking of that, actually, what are your thoughts on that? How have you found things like your engine riggers and your engine masters to be in combat?
I think we're seeing definitely a lot less balloons now. Unfortunately, with the coherency and the max size on these things, as well as some new wording on rulings in the core book, which unfortunately let you can't you can't do make a move if you can't do something instead of doing something if you couldn't do it before. Essentially, what it means is you can't have these ender riggers hitch on boats during a hero phase move, which was the one of the favorite tactics was you take an iron in second edition, take an ironclad in Zilfin, move it up in the hero phase with a fly high, hitch 6 balloon boys and an ender master along with it, who can then make their own move in the hero phase and then charge out. new rulings have stopped anything from hitching on a boat as long as it doesn't. If it, yeah.
I think one thing I want to call out that Kron is trying to say here, and
it's
no. One thing I want to say here is that right now we are still waiting for additional FAQs to happen in this game. So there's a lot of confusion in the tournament scenes right now with the way Fly High works. There's some no. We were talking before we started the way that Fly High works with the Alpha Beast Pack, because you can get a free move. Does that allow me to fly high before the game starts? And some people at the moment are ruling yes, some people are ruling it no. The way that garrisoning and getting out of a boat, there's a bit of gray right now. So, when we're talking here, take it with a grain of salt. GW might update the FAQ, who knows, hopefully tomorrow. But no, there's a little bit of gray in the Kharadron Overlord scene.
Yeah, there's a lot of very vague wording around a lot of this, especially considering like normal moves, runs, and retreats, and like what is what counts as what. It's some very vaguely defined rules that we're trying to get our heads around. But essentially, right now, you can only hitch riggers onto boats if they make a fly high in the movement phase.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right.
It makes sense. So if you fly high using Alpha Beast Pack or Zilfin, which happens the hero phase or before the game happens, you can't move these balloons with the boat. Only the boat moves. It gets real technical sometimes.
Yeah, that's fine. And we'll get the clarity. I guess I just want to acknowledge that there's a lot of gray. If you are going to an upfront tournament, I would probably recommend you at the moment to talk to your tournament organizer to say, how are you ruling this? Because because it may change if you take the Alpha Beast Pack, it may change the way that you're garrisoning or putting units into a boat. So and there's just a couple of different examples.
And I know there's a lot of still gray about whether Alpha Beast Pack can or cannot fly high these boats in the first place.
Yeah.
I've seen events that rule it yes they can. I've seen events that rule it no they can't. There's a lot of
We're waiting for clarity.
We're doing
pink elephant in the room. We need some clarity. We won't go into too much detail with it, but just know at the moment, it may change your decision. If people go, yeah, cool, no problem, you can do Alpha Beast Pack. It might go, cool, I'm going to put more boats in because I want to garrison those boats. I'm then going to move it up. This is what I'm going to do. But if they say no, then the way you look at your list might be very different. And even things like, just redeploy and unleash hell. And there's a bit of gray, if a boat was to redeploy, could the units inside unleash hell and not the boat? So
Flamingo, yes, you could. The boat's redeploying, but the unit inside is not redeploying, so you could unleash hell with the Arkanauts or with the Thunders you have inside that boat, for sure.
Yeah, I think this is a lot of gray for KO. I just want to acknowledge that. But, bring us back to AOS 3. Have you found any particular grand strategies or even like battle tactics and core battalions? Like, how are you thinking around those sides of things? Because I imagine things like Hold the Line, which is pretty popular for most armies. Isn't that good for you?
Yeah, I mean, so our battle line is historically it's Arkanauts, and then occasionally you've got your Thunderers or your Balloon Boys, but for the most part it's little 25 mil base, 1 wound, 4+ save guys, and not a whole lot of them either.
Not a lot of summoning, not a lot of high armor saves. You're not regenerating them. Even things like you don't have the wizards to bring in Emerald Life Swarm to begin with. So
yeah. So I guess the grand strategies I like is dominating presence, which is you have more units at the end of the game than your opponent. KO is quite MSUs. You are going to have a fair few units, especially if you have 3 characters and a unit tucked into a boat. As long as that boat survives, that's 5. That counts as 5, and you can really like at the end of the game, you should still have more units than your opponent because you are taking out and killing a lot of your opponent's chaff and their smaller units, and so that's a good one. The one where you get a control terrain is generally good because it means at turn 5 you can fly high and just jump on everything at the end of the game.
I was thinking that one would be a good one, especially because you're tagging terrain as you go. It's a bit more bookkeeping because you got to be keeping track of how many pieces of terrain you've claimed over the course of the game. But yeah, you've got the tools to be able to do that and win that one. Though it's a bit techie.
It's a bit more bookkeeping, but yeah, that's a good one. Killing your enemy heroes. I mean, that's always a favorite. Like you've got guns, you've got the reach to just pick up and snipe them. Although that goes with if you're trying to kill all your enemies' heroes, now you kind of have to kill that Archaon and Morathy, which you might not be able to do. So iffy on that one. I like dominating presence personally, but yeah, there's a couple of options.
What are your thoughts? Box to Board has just asked a good question because I don't really talk about this very much, and I'd love to get just your overview. What's your thoughts on building a custom skyport? Do you think third edition has opened some good windows, or do you think the traditional ones are still just stronger than what you can build custom?
Oh, I think custom skyport has some really good plays right now.
Yeah.
We're really liking custom skyport just because it doesn't come with a required command trait and an artifact, which means you can pick out of the Kharadron Overlord artifact list is amazing, and the more of those you can take, it can really like swing whole games. So the one, if you're playing on a custom skyport, you can take your chemist. You can give him Collector, which lets you take an extra artifact for free as your command trait, and then you can take.
Is that a KO artifact, or could that be a universal artifact?
Can be a universal artifact. So you could take the book if you wanted to. Make your chemist a wizard. Give your ironclad a mystic shield.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Like, you could get Flaming Weapon. You could get the Amulet of Destiny for a 5-up ward save. So unlocking that could actually give you some good options. And Amulet of Destiny, like if you got a hero that needs to stay around, that Amulet of Destiny is just rock solid. And then you can still heal D3 wounds with a heroic action.
Yeah. And we've got the KO classics like Spell in the Bottle. That's everyone loves Spell in the Bottle.
It's still good.
Oh yeah, it's still good. I mean, look, it's never not going to be a good thing to just drop a rat trap for free on your opponent's face. I think currently the way Endless Spells work has limited the amount, the type of Endless Spells we can take for a Spell in a Bottle, because now it requires a wizard to control this Endless Spell. If you don't have a wizard, it's just going to jump back in your face.
It becomes wild.
Chemist, and Chemist isn't a wizard. So things like Geminids and the Daughters of Cain Snake have kind of dropped a little, but Rat Trap, which doesn't move, just sits in one spot, stopping things from running, doing a bunch of mortal wounds. That's just solid, and it only went up 10 points.
Yeah, they didn't go up too much because most of it was the predatory spells that went up in points. So what you're saying is anything that doesn't have to move. So things like Shackles would be a great example. As you said, the Rat Trap, which is the Skaven Warp Lightning. The Warp Lightning Vortex.
Warp Lightning Vortex. Yep.
There's a couple of good options where you're right. Where if your wizard isn't around, it doesn't go wild. Palisade is another one that doesn't do that. Anything that doesn't, it doesn't have to be controlled.
It has limited our scope a little bit. People were usually throwing out the wild things like the Wildfire Taurus, or some of the Warriors of Chaos ones that
the Darkfire Demon Riff.
Yeah, we can't really use those as well anymore. But Warp Lightning Vortex will never not be a good option.
And the problem as well, if you were to take the Arcane Tome, it's the wizard that casts the Endless spell has to control it. So it's not like you could use Spell in the Bottle to drop the Bullfire Taurus, and then whenever your hero has the Arcane Tome, then controls it. It doesn't work like that. It has to be the wizard who casts it, controls it. So just something to keep in mind.
So and the reason that KO artifacts are really good, and custom Skyport lets you use 2 of those without having to use a warlord or a battle command entourage battalion.
Yeah, anything with the magnificent icon.
Yeah, I think KO is still an army that very much cares about how many drops it is. KO, you want to be between 1 and 3 drops is the absolute maximums you want to go there, because you need to control who's going first and second in this game.
And that's another point as well. What's changed in deployment is if you go 1 drop, which is, you got to drop all the force in one go, you can't piecemeal that anymore. Back in the old edition, you could still go 1 drop, but just piecemeal and go 1 model, 1 model, 1 model, and then win it. You have one choice, and that is put it all down at the same time. So I imagine you got to have a strategy. If you're going 1 drop, do you want to go first, or do you want to go second in the first battle round on average?
It depends. It really depends. If you have pre-game moves in your army, like Alpha Beast Pack or Barrack Nar, you have to go first. If you don't, you probably still want to go second. So like a Zilfin list that can fly a ship high in the hero phase can still, sit wholly back in a corner, let your opponent come forward a bit, and then jump in on your first turn into the middle of their army, shoot them, maybe get second turn, shoot them again, that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of there's Alpha Beast Pack and there's Barrack Nar, both of which pick up a boat before the game begins and dump it 9 inches away from your opponent's army. And at that point, you want turn 1, or it's going to get surrounded and killed.
Yeah. And you might get doubled as well.
You might. You really got to play for that.
Yeah, you need to. If you're gonna go first, you've got to do more damage and neutralize. But probably one other good call out as well that people might have missed is that your opponent can only use 1 inspiring presence per turn. So if you were to do like a lot of low volume shooting and do a bunch of wounds to multiple units, you might force them to use an inspiring presence, and they're not going to be able to keep everyone battle shock immune. So you could actually do a lot of damage through attrition
by just shooting 2 units. Yeah,
or shooting 2 or 3 units. If you can do enough damage to it, and they've only got 1 inspiring presence, unless there's some other battle shock immunity, you make them, that. Yeah, you make them have a really tough decision. So, focusing on 1 target might not be the only solution. You could actually, make someone lose a lot, especially if they've gone first and they don't have as many command points as the person who went second.
Yeah. So you really want to be able to control that first turn, second turn dynamic from the get-go. Yeah. Which is why I think low drops is crucial, and why custom skyports with the ability to take 2 relics, even in a 1 or 2 drop army, very nice.
Very nice. So very nice. We're doing all that poor Borat impersonations, but I'm going to go to Krohn's list in a minute. Before we do that, I want to get maybe your top 5. Like, what are your top 5 units that you really like in 3rd edition from your army?
Well, Ironclad, fantastic choice. Carries a whole lot of dudes. You can layer some really nice buffs on it. And it still just puts out the damage. Like, there's so much, as long as you're not fighting Coalesced Seraphon, because it's got a lot of damage to weapons. As long as you're not fighting that one very specific army, then Ironclad, lovely, love it.
Awesome. Okay, so Ironclad's definitely one. The fact that it's got a high armor save, lots of wounds, does a boatload of attacks. Just overall, Ironclad, good choice.
A boatload of attacks, you say?
I did say that.
All right. Number 2, Navigator, just for that halving movement ability.
Yeah.
And the spells are nice. Halving movement, really good. And it just brings more speed to your ships. In a game where movement is the most important characteristic, a hero who purely deals with manipulating those characteristics is fantastic.
Yeah. If people are concerned about Gotrek right now, Gotrek's one of those monster people in the meta right now who are freaking people out. Reducing his movement, and his base movement is only 4, reducing that down to a base of 2. No, you cannot do
Unfortunately,
that?
you can't. No, I have to pick a flying unit.
Well, make a flying Gotrek, then halve it. I know some. I know that I think it's like Fading Vigor or whatever it is in Death that reduces movement. Okay, cool. All right, I'll skip what I was going to say there. But anyway, your Marathi, your who else flies? Teclis, Marathi,
Archaon, battle cabbages.
Yeah, there's a lot of flying monsters that you could halve movement and reduce their synergies and their ability to get into combat.
All these new dragons that are coming out, just
yeah. Who knows what the Stormcast dragons are going to do? That's going to be a conversation in its own.
Yeah. Always looking to the future, you know.
Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, Manfred. There's a lot of death flying monsters. So
I'm personally having to deal with a unit of 3 Terrorgeists right now. Because our local vampire player has figured out that he can do that.
Yeah. I reckon actually, I was just thinking about this because in the meta right now, the Lumineth Fox is giving people headaches. The Manfred is giving people headaches, and it's because they don't have to get into combat and they can avoid combat super easy. I feel like with the amount of shooting and the range of your shooting and the volume of shooting, I reckon you're actually a really good gatekeeper for those types of builds because Manfred is causing nightmares to players. And we've seen some interesting lists. I think it's like Joe Cryer or there's a few Fox builds right now where they're running like 2, 3, 4 Foxes that are just zipping around the board, moving in your shooting phase as well as their shooting phase, and you just can't get them.
I mean, against the Foxes, we do have a lot of long range on the boats, up to 24, 36, so that should be able to tag the Foxes.
Yeah.
Should be able to.
Yeah, you should have the range.
Yeah. Arkanauts. Love Arkanauts now. We're starting to think Arkanauts are almost better than Thunderers at this point. Yeah, so Rend 1 again going against this high armor saves. Rend 1 on Thunderers have 2 shots with 3s and 4s at Rend 1. And they cost 270 points for 10 now, which is a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say that's quite expensive. 300 points gets me almost a Terrorgeist.
Yeah, Thunders went up in points again to a point where they're almost not. They're barely still. They've got a roll, and I think it's more using that 18-inch range as opposed to actually using the proper killing power of them. Arkanauts are sitting here at 100 points per 10 with 2 shots per guy. 4s and 4s, but if they're near an objective, that becomes 3s and 4s. And 2 shots, no rend. And no rend is, I feel has a lot more of a place in 3rd edition than Rend 1 now, because you're not paying that extra points for that Rend 1.
I think it comes down to the quality and the volume of attacks. So, what are you hitting on? What are you wounding on? But you're right. I think, and we've had this conversation a few times now with other players, and, Does rend -1 mean nothing? No, it doesn't. So don't throw your rend 1 toys out of the cot. But because there's a lot of +1 to saves, and we mentioned it earlier, Misty Shield, cover, all that defense, just to name a few. Rend 1 isn't as reliable doing damage as it used to be, and with some very high armored units out there with a 2+ or a 3+ armor save, you really need Rend 2 or Rend 3 or mortal wounds to get just to get through the high save.
Yeah. So I'm just looking at pure efficiency. Like Kharadron, Arkanauts and Thunderers have a very similar profile gun. Arkanauts are half the range and no rend, while Thunderers have rend 1 and are 18-inch range. But for 200 points, you get 20 Arkanauts, which is 40 shots. For 270 points, you get 10 Thunders, which is 20 shots. So you're getting double the amount of firepower for less points, which is just more efficient.
And it allows you to put those points into boats, I guess, is the other element.
Boats to carry them around, yeah. So top 5, that was 3.
Yeah.
Number 4, admirals. I guess in 2nd edition you never saw an admiral, because a lot of their command abilities work on boats and used to function like the old command abilities did. They had a command ability that if you use it, the boat the admiral is on gets to reroll 1s to hit in shooting, which back in 2nd edition, cool. I can get my chemist to do that.
You had rerolls everywhere. Back in 2nd edition, you had rerolls coming out the wazoo.
Now, that reroll 1s is looking real nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's not a lot of rerolls in the game now. So, which is one of the triumph. In the old triumphs, for example, you would get the reroll. There's none of that anymore. As one example.
Yeah, triumphs I find it gives you there's a nice one that gives you +1 to wound, which that's the thing you would use on a boat or thunderers, and there's one that lets you ignore battle shock checks, which I actually end up using more on Arkanauts. So you have this squad hold this objective, and they'll get punched down to like 6 or 5 dudes. Flip your ether gold token in the battle shock phase, and just go, yeah, they're staying there. I've gotten, and then I'll spend my hold the line bravery thing on the other side of the board.
Speaking of Arkanauts, and we'll get to your list. What are your thoughts on 30 Arkanauts? Do you think double reinforcing Arkanauts is worth it, or because you've also lost the +1 bravery for every 10? So is that too over investing in Arkanauts, or what are your thoughts?
30 Arkanauts, I don't know. You'd at 30, you can't stick them into any boat, so you'd need to find some way to move those Arkanauts where they need to be. So unfortunately, Arkanauts have a 9-inch range with a 4-inch move. So on their own, without anything to help them, they are basically stuck where you deploy them. But if you could find a way to get the enemy to come to the Arkanauts, or put them into a position on the board where they can do damage. Like 30 Arkanauts, you charge that. That's 60 shots coming back at you with Unleash Hell. They'll do something. It's just the transportation that I'm worried about. It's having no maneuverability on that kind of thing.
If you really want to defend an objective, it might be really good, but that's a lot of points not doing a lot while it's got a 9-inch range, and it's not engaging with the enemy, I guess.
Yeah, it's just not being able. You probably won't be able to use them at their fullest potential.
Yeah. No, good call. And let's talk your list. Let's talk the list. I think we've got a couple of good options. You've given me a whole bunch. I'm sure you said 5. If not, the 5th one is Gotrek. I don't know what it is.
Look, Gotrek.
Brock. It's Brock. Brock was number 5.
Brock is the greatest Kharadron character in the book.
If people listen to this episode and they listen to Brock, maybe we'll get a Brock meta happening. Forget that other Duarden. Let's talk Brock. That
Look, he gives all your guys within 24 inches rerolls to charge. That's something.
well,
Get
it's
all
good.
those.
It would be good if it wasn't KO charging.
Yeah. Look.
Works for Marauders. It works for Marauders, like almost like being able to get a bit more guaranteed charge.
Yeah. Look, if you could do it, get it to happen on some like allied Hearthguard berserkers, even that'd be something.
Well. I mean, the internet rumors, and I'm not speculating. I'm not saying that I know this, but the rumors are that Duarden are all going to come together, and we're going to get like a little combined like Auric book for Duarden. So who knows? Maybe there will be boat-faring fire slayers.
I've been hearing rumors of. I've been hearing stories in White Dwarf of a certain dwarf going to different dwarf factions and rallying them together into one combined army. It's exciting. It's an exciting thought.
Having a unit of Hearthguard berserkers would make a huge difference too. Having a bit of combat prowess, because you just don't have the combat, and it would allow you to have a few more tools. But hey, this isn't the combo show, and we'll definitely do a combo show if that happens. That when I was looking at the list that you sent to me, the first thing I was really surprised at was just a skyport. Zilfin obviously is one of the popular ones. There's Barrack Nar or even Barrack Urbaz you used to see a lot, sometimes even Barrack Zon, but you've gone something completely different. So talk to me about your list. You've got, a double navigator, you've got an admiral, you've got your frigate, you've got, just for anyone who's listening to the podcast, by the way, who can't see your list, you've got, 3 units of Arkanauts in units of 20. You've got a gyrocopter that's coming in as an ally, and you've got a unit of Thunderers. So, and obviously there's a whole bunch of kit out here, but talk to me about this list. Talk to me about what you're doing with it, how it plays, what drove these decisions.
I think it's also missing an ironclad. Should be in. No, there I see it. It's just not bolded.
All right, it's in there. There's an ironclad in there. That's my formatting error.
The amount of errors Lee makes. All right, so yeah, Barrack Zilfin used to be my baby. Like I took that thing to every single event. But now Barrack Nar. So I've already talked a little bit about Barrack Nar. That Gale Force staff can only be given to a navigator, so more reasons to take navigators to halve that enemy movement.
If they're flyers, it's a flying one, right?
Yeah. The Gale Force staff, anything.
Oh, so that's our Go Trek denier then.
So that halves. That's the one that halves the charge distance. Sorry. So Go Trek, it's where you can redeploy back and then halve their charge, and then Go Trek's not going anywhere.
Lol. Yeah.
Sad Go Trek. So the sneaky list tech with Barrack Nar. So Barrack Nar is already known as they're the pirate skyport, the shadow skyport that. The rules are more like guidelines anyway. So the thing that Barrack Nar does is that command trait the Admiral has, the opportunistic privateer. So what it does, and it's been touched a little bit with an FAQ. The original FAQ for 3rd edition went over this and changed some parts. It's now, if the general is part of the garrison of Sky Vessel that's on the battlefield, after armies are set up, but before the first battle round begins, you can remove that Sky Vessel from the battlefield and set it up anywhere more than 9 inches from enemy units. So it's like a fly high, but very specifically, it is not a fly high; it's a redeploy. Which gets around some of the other limitations. And then, if you do so, that Sky Vessel cannot make a normal move, and the FAQ has come in and said it also cannot make a retreat. In the first battle round, and units in the garrison cannot leave the garrison in the first battle round. So, what's not a normal move or a retreat?
What?
A run.
And that's probably another good call out, is that they have separated the movements as well. So you used to be able to retreat and run. That's no longer a thing. It is a run or a retreat. You can't run in a retreat. So just another clarification.
Yeah. And then one of their other abilities, Amendment, prosecute wars with all haste. In your first turn, friendly Barrack Nar units can run and still shoot later in that turn. So you're redeploying this Ironclad. With 20, I put 20 Arkanauts inside this Ironclad, which, unless it has a specific relic, which this one doesn't, means it is at half move and it cannot fly high.
Okay.
Using Barrack Nar, you can still essentially fly high this thing, put it 9 inches away, and then in your first turn, run and move around as you would.
Because you're not flying high technically, but you're using the opportunistic privateer that acts like a fly high that isn't a fly high. So even though you can't fly high, you're still getting the fly high rules through a different set of rules.
Yes.
You are a good lawyer.
Look, it's all about the Kharadron code, right? It's all about reading that code and making it work for you.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way, because there are workarounds, especially depending. Yeah, I like it.
And you still can't get out of the garrison, but you normally don't need to, because everyone can shoot out of the garrison anyway.
Because right now you've got to not move in order to get out of the garrison, right? Like you sacrifice a move and fly high is counting as a move. That's the current ruling.
Yes, so current ruling, if the boats are considered a garrison, which we're fairly sure they are, units get out of garrisons at the end of the movement phase, and which means if you get your units out of a garrison, your boat cannot then fly high because it's the end of the movement phase.
I think we've dropped about like 10 million different fly highs, but yeah, no, it's an interesting one. Like, and even things like the fearsome raiders, subtracting 1 from the bravery, and again, we've just talked a little bit about forcing battle shock tests, only having one access to 1 inspiring presence per turn. That's for everything. That's while they're within 6 inches of a unit. Oh, that's quite generous.
Which is?
The fearsome raiders. So subtract 1 to the bravery characteristic of enemy units while they're within 6 inches of a friendly Barrack Nar unit.
Yeah, it's a really good bonus, and again, goes into that baiting out inspiring presence plays.
And 6 inches is good. It means you don't have to be within combat. You just be within 6. So something you can play around with.
Yeah. So you've got this Ironclad. It's got 2 navigators, an admiral, and 20 Arkanauts on it. So it will put out a decent amount of firepower. And according to with this, you'd also like to take the frigate and put that behind the Ironclad. So use the Ironclad as this kind of buffer, and then use the frigate and the Thunderers in the frigate, and with their long 18-inch range to kind of shoot over the Ironclad into the same kind of stuff that that's shooting at. Which then you can still focus enough firepower out of these 2 vessels full of dudes to put a decent dent in your opponent's army.
Is there anything in particular you're focusing at? Are you going for heroes? You're looking to neutralize something within a battle tactic? Like, how do you choose? Because obviously you're putting a lot of points into one target. So how do you decide what you're focusing on?
Yeah, so with this kind of list, you don't focus the Archaon or the big thing. That's what the 2 navigators are for. And then you try to deploy these ships on the other side of the board of this big, whatever the big thing is. And then you focus down the chaff. You focus down their ability to hold objectives, mostly, because this is definitely playing that objective game. While these 2 ships are, in your opponent's flank, making a lot of noise and doing a lot of damage, the other 2 units of Arkanauts are just running up that board, squatting on objectives, and going, we've got 20 wounds on each with a 4-up save and goal to stop anything running away. We're holding this. Because a lot of the new point scoring, you don't need to hold every objective on the board. You need to hold 2 and more than your opponent. So that's what this list tries to do. It holds 2 and stops your opponent from holding as many as you can.
And to what S Matter's saying, which is no Go Track in this list pass, well, guess what? Like Go Track is plug and play. You can just find 400 points and put him into any list, and it doesn't matter. So, and this is just one of many examples of lists you can build. So, if you really want to run Go Trek right now, put him in Hunters of the Heartland. Get him up the board. Use your KO to shoot off your enemy while Go Trek's coming up the board. Fine, easy. It's like so easy to do. But if you don't want to run Go Trek, then we got all the boats.
Like we discussed, the 2 Ironclads on a Go Trek just went 4-1 in Copenhagen. So put him in that. Just rush him forward. It's Go Trek. Everyone knows how Go Trek plays.
Quick question on Mornar. So Stephen Mitchell's asking, Mornar can't leave garrisoning turn 1. So if the Ironclad is destroyed, the units can't be set up and they all die. Is that no? That's not right.
I'm not actually sure. So the play obviously would be to not have your Ironclad die. But
that's obviously the great decision, right? Like, don't do that.
Choose to not have your Ironclad die. Just choose that.
But when a boat destroyed, don't you still roll the dice and on a roll of a 1 the model's slain, or has that changed?
No, so that's still the same, and then they have to be placed wholly within 3 inches of the boat and wholly 3 inches away from the enemy.
Which you should be because you're outside of 9 to drop the boat down.
Yeah. But not if they charge the boat and surround it. At that point, everything in the boat usually dies anyway.
Yeah.
If they shoot it, then you're usually fine.
Yeah. And that's always been a tactic. Like you use a whole bunch of wounds to swarm the boat, and if you can deny them from dropping out, then the whole thing would be destroyed.
That's happened like so many times to me in the past. But
what I will say is because of the coherency and the reinforcement, I'm seeing like I used to run gits list, and my gits would have like 160 to 200 gits. I don't run that nearly as many gits in my army now. So I don't know how MSU is going to work versus your horde meta, but I haven't seen a lot of hordes at the moment. So you might not have enough bodies to do the swarm. Other than like pink horrors and things, but most armies aren't going hordes.
Yeah, and so a lot of this list is also so the Ironclad is relatively safe in this list. Because there's that navigator that's halving the charges of an incoming unit, and you have the ability with your own maneuverability to really put that boat anywhere on the table before the game begins, anywhere you want to on that table. You can really section off what even has the ability to charge your boat, and what can get close and what is allowed to charge. The fastest units in the game have fly, and the 2 navigators directly counter that. And then, if they do happen to charge your Ironclad, there's more fun stuff. So the Ironclad unleashes hell. Then you've got the artifact I put on it, the last word, which lets you unleash hell again with your cannon. So now it's unleashing hell twice. And then you've got 20 angry Arkanauts inside the Ironclad ready to punch whatever's trying to do it. Because another nice ability Admiral has, he's got so many abilities but it only affects this one boat. But one of the abilities he has is give everything in the boat +1 to hit for that phase, in the combat phase.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot put into this list to stop people charging the boat, and if they happen to charge the boat, it will do a lot of damage before they even get to hit.
So is this list more like a Death Star list, but instead of it being like a whole bunch of units circling each other like a synergy, it's more of like a concentrated on the boat, the double navigator with the 20 Arkanauts with a buffed up boat, and that is like your just absolute massive sledgehammer?
I suppose so. I don't know. It's still very leaning into that like control and stopping your opponent from doing what your opponent wants to do, which is really probably killing the 40 Arkanauts in the back line who are holding objectives.
Yeah.
It's just stopping, forcing your opponent to make poor choices, essentially.
Right. So this list would come undone if your opponent would focus on the Arkanauts, because they're obviously the wounds, right? There's not a lot of wounds in that unit. They're not a very high armor save, so that would deny that. This is almost acting like if people are going to focus on your Ironclad, awesome. It means you're scoring. If they focus on your Arkanauts, then you're losing the ability to score, but you've still got this big sledgehammer.
Yeah. Well, so inside this Ironclad is another 20 Arkanauts who could jump out and hop on an objective. So it's splitting up. It's just forcing those decisions to happen.
Yep. What's with the gyrocopter? That's standing out to me like dog's balls. Like what on earth is that gyrocopter doing in this list?
So I've got a. This is a list of that I made with models that I have essentially. With the 60 Arkanauts, and I had 75 points left over. Didn't know what to do with it, so I put a gyrocopter in there. Because it's fast, it caps an objective, I guess. it exists. It's fun.
Okay, I'm just wondering, like, version, do you just go for like a unit of Aether Wings and try to go for the Triumph?
Yeah, but also like the steam cannon on a gyrocopter is really fun. And if you find a horde with it, it will hurt that horde. Another version of this list I thought, so instead of having 2 units of 20 Arkanauts and a gyrocopter as you kind of realign, you've got 2 units of 10 Arkanauts and 1 unit of 20 Ironbreakers, which I don't have the models for that yet, but I really want to. Yeah. I don't know what would hold objectives better if it's splitting those Arkanauts up with 3+ base save. It's really nice.
Yeah, because there's a couple of good options you could bring in, especially because you got cities allies as long as they're Dwarven keyword. Is that right?
Yeah. So the Ironweld Arsenal and the Dispossessed is the allies we get.
So you could bring in Longbeards, you could bring in Iron Drakes, you could bring in. There's a whole bunch of really good ally choices that would give you, because they're quite high armored as well from memory. So that would give you something a little bit different.
Yeah, there's definitely room that I'm experimenting with the list. One of the experiments is instead of having the Ironbreakers, just take another unit of 10 Thunderers sitting in your back line, just pouring out shots. Also, Gyrocopters definitely better than Gyro Bombers.
And
they've got the elite keyword.
And that's important because
it lets you issue commands to itself without having a unit champion.
Correct. So if you don't have if you're not elite, it means you need a hero to activate a command point, like all out attack, all out defense, or something else. Things like the Lord Ordinator have always been good options. Even things like the Knight of Xeros is another good option. But we are on the eve of a new Stormcast Battle Tome, so who knows how they're going to change. So that's my only caveat to that.
Knight Azeros I like because it gives you that reroll ones, which you don't get that much. Lord Ordinator gives a War Machine +1 to hit, but that's very common. Like, that's really easy to just get from a million different sources now.
And it's good for turn 1. I always found it's really good for turn 1. But then even like with my Cities of Sigmar steam tanks, the Lord Ordinator is just running, just trying to keep up with the steam tank to be able to shoot. So I always find that as a challenge. But again, Stormcast is going to get new rules, so I don't. That's why I'm always a bit nervous of Stormcast.
I know in 2nd edition, a trick I tried a couple times was you take an Ordinator and combo him with a Knight Vexilla, who then teleports the Knight Lord Ordinator forwards. So you can jump the ships forward, then in a kind of castle formation, then jump the Ordinator into the middle of that ship and just shoot out of all angles.
Yes,
It wasn't the most effective.
not literally in the ship, but yes, you could do that. But you're sinking like 300 points into that combination to be able to do it.
Yeah, it wasn't really ever that worth it, but it was a fun thing to try.
Hades has asked a good question as well, and I assume Thundrix is the what's it called, the Underworld Battalion? No, the Underworld's unit. The Underworld's unit.
The Warband. Yep.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that Thundrix, because he's an Aether Chemist with a free retinue, and his ability affects hits instead of wounds like the regular chemist?
Yeah, and I do like effect. He gives a unit reroll ones to hit, which is very useful in this meta. He's got more play than Brock. I'll give him that much. He's got more play than Brock.
Poor Brock.
I mean, Thundrick and his 4 guys will fit in a gun hauler with the gun hauler expanded plates. Forget what it's called. It's an artifact that you can give to a gun hauler that gives it a carrying capacity of 5, and he and his four friends fit perfectly into that thing. Thing is, whiz around the field.
How do you feel about gun haulers? Because I remember, at least from my cities days, because I played a lot of Tempest dice, so 1 in 4 would be KO. You know, I would think about things like ironclads. I would think about things like gun haulers, but very rarely I would choose the frigate, that middle ship. I was never really a fan. And obviously, you've got the 2 big ships. What are your thoughts on gun haulers?
Gun haulers specifically, they got hit a little hard with the points increase. So they're 155 up from 130 to 155. And I'm not sure it really affects their spammability, because 1 gun hauler was never enough. You needed 2 or 3 to get the proper amount of firepower in. But that's just gone up by 50 to 75 points, which you just don't have space for. I
used to hitch some balloon boys on the gun hauler, so that was the other option. But you're right. Then you're putting a lot of points into that unit that has no consistency, because you can't do any re-rolls, you can't get any pluses. It is what it is.
I'm really struggling to find a way to make balloon boys function in my list at the moment. They went up in points, 15 to 20 points, depending on which one you took, and a 1-inch range on a unit with 32 mil bases it's tough to get the most out of that.
Yeah, and that's probably one thing that's really hurt the engine riggers, is the fact that they're on a 32 mil base, and if they've got a 1-inch attack, the way Coherency works, you're not going to get all of your attacks in a unit of, well, if you've got a unit of 3, it's not a problem. It's when you go to a unit of 6, the Coherency rule kicks in. So when you've got a minimum unit of 3, it's not so bad.
Yeah.
So
I guess you just don't want, but yeah, but 3 just don't do that much, and you're trying to get the most out of your units here, because you're really trying to get as many into a battle regiment as you can, and to waste one of those slots with a small unit of 3 guys, you want your points to be doing more in that case.
No. Do you think what you've said is true both of engine riggers and sky wardens, or do you think maybe one of them has a bit more play right now?
I think Sky Wardens definitely have probably more play, because they have a 2-inch range. What they lack is the Rend 2. They're only Rend 1, and the skyport that used to give them +1 to hit and wound on the charge, turning them from 4s 3s to 3s 2s. The skyport doesn't work as well anymore. One of the big plays that people used to do was jump boats with riggers forward, activate cogs, which then gave more +2 to charge, which giving you those 7-inch charges as opposed to 9-inch. But now you're kind of stuck, hoping to roll a 9.
And cogs has changed as well. Cogs has changed significantly.
Yes. It really stops you from being able to do that the classic Zon charging list.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of the synergies of the Balloon Boys have just kind of disappeared with third edition, which is a little shame. But
you know,
it moves on. We get other things.
Yeah, look, I remember playing like a 30 Balloon Boy list in first edition, so I wouldn't mind them sitting on the sidelines for a little bit. But I think, you know, one of the cool things about this show is that this is a first look. This is meant to be just a first observation as the meta evolves, as Krohn plays with more armies, starts playing around with different builds. There actually might be a new build. Who knows? New model. The way the game kind of changes, the battle pack. You know, we might be playing in Gur right now, but if a new battle pack comes, and we've already seen some rules for Hish in White Dwarf, we've seen Mega Gargants get their own battalions. All of a sudden, this game changes, right? In a couple of months' time, who knows what KO might be getting or might benefit you. So, it's not goodbye. It's goodbye for now.
Like we say, it's the Wild West. This is one idea. There are people are bringing all kinds of ideas with Alpha Beast Pack and still trying to. I've been saying Alpha Strike is not that great, but if you Alpha Beast Pack and with 2 Ironclads filled with 10 Thunderers each, and a Chemist with Warp Lightning Vortex, like this, if anything's gonna Alpha Strike, that's gonna Alpha Strike. So maybe that'll work. What else are people doing? Like, it's using Barrack Nar to get those 15-man Thunderers, just literally walking Thunderers up, waiting for them to get charged so you can unleash hell with +1 shot and +1 to wound, because you can use your Ether Gold, you can use a Triumph in whenever you get picked to shoot, and just going as a big baits shoot, charge me kind of trap. There's a lot of stuff that we could do. It's just we're just playing around and seeing which works the best right now, if it works at all.
And I think the board size as well has really played in your favor, because you did have a lot of medium range shooting that now is quite good because the board has shrunk. Things like your dwarf allies, whether it is going to be dispossessed in Cities of Sigmar or if it's Fire Slayers, you know, one of the things with Fire Slayers has always been is slow walking up the board, which is why they needed to teleport. But now the board has changed quite a lot, that Fire Slayers actually might be a good ally choice to bring in as a bit of combat prowess. So if you want a bit more versatility as opposed to just shooting, Fire Slayers actually might be a really good choice.
Oh yeah, I know a fellow admiral named Max loves his dispossessed and Fire Slayer allies, and they do put out a lot of damage and they're tough. And there's so many things that we're just trying out right now.
Yeah. Hades has asked a good question, maybe to start bringing us home, is some of the armies right now that are strong in the meta, and Lumineth is definitely one that everyone's talking about, whether it's the Archer build, whether it's the Fox build, whether it is Techless, or the Cathalar. Lumineth seems to have a lot of people talking about them, but when I looked at the GTs that have just finished, very few. I mean, there was a few Lumineth in the top 5, but I don't think Lumineth took any of them out. I don't think any of them actually won it by Lumineth. What are your thoughts as a KO player to deal with Lumineth?
I mean, what we're trying to do is this. I know the real damage comes from the bows, right? The bows, rolling 5s, getting mortal wounds.
Yeah, or 6s.
So what I'd be trying to do is take that first turn and just try and use my range to wipe out as many of these bows as I can, because I'm not 100% sure that what 30 bows could do, but I'm fairly sure that you could take out an Ironclad with 30 bows.
Well,
it's got 18 wounds, no mortal wounds defense.
They're normally fishing for those mortal wounds, so they're great for pulling down the small hero. So if you put your navigator, your admirals, you put them in the boat, they wouldn't be able to be targeted. So it might be a good defensive mechanism to kind of not let them pick you off.
They can totally. They can totally target those heroes in those boats.
Can they?
Unfortunately,
Can they? Okay. So
the
I
heroes
can.
they are anything inside a garrison is -1 to be hit and has +1 armor save,
Here I was
which
thinking.
is
Yeah. Okay.
it's good defense against everything that isn't just fish for 5s and 6s in mortal
They don't
wounds.
care. They don't care.
They
They just
don't
want to do the
care.
mortal wounds. I was thinking that the ironclad would have to be the target for some reason, but okay. All right. Ignore what I just said.
Yeah. So Lumineth could totally just pick off the heroes in the ironclad. Could probably just kill the ironclad. Teclis again, big multi-wound, high armor safe hero that I'm probably not going to touch. I'll just the KO plan would be to kill everything around Teclis and just go, okay, you've got Teclis, I've got like 5 units, and I'm going to take all the objectives.
Yeah, and the other one would be the Fox build, which is running around. But there's so many different builds. Like I think for me, and I was having this discussion in my Discord, is Lumineth might be strong, but you've also got things like the Sons of Behemoth, the Gargants, and I think the Gargants are going to be quite popular and strong in the meta. And the way you handle Lumineth is very different to the way you build and handle Gargants. And then you've got Archeon and Kairos, Morathi and Gotrek. So at the moment, I wouldn't certainly build towards one build because there's a few big bads in the meta right now.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, it's true. Like because you're seeing even like Be'lakor in Legion of the First Prince. Like that's a little sneaky one, and I think it's the host of the Ever Chosen. There's another little sneaky chaos build kind of rising. So I would like wait till the meta's kind of settled a little bit, and then you start going, right, what are the tools that I need to handle the top 3? Right now, I don't think there's a top 3 yet.
No, it hasn't built itself out, and Sons of Behemoth are an issue. Because none of those things are fly. How am I supposed to make them slower?
And to answer the question around can KO even touch a Gargant army, I say the answer is yes. I think absolutely. You're going to find a Mega Gargant who has the Amulet of Destiny, so that's a 5-up ward save. Take everyone else out. I think you've got to focus fire, and you've got to take out the other Gargants, especially if they've got the baby Gargants, because they've only got Bravery 7. They've got a 5-up armor save. They'll die to a stiff breeze.
So target priority again at KO is really important. You need to know your opponent's army and what the opponent is trying to do, so you can effectively counter that. If you see a big tar pit of armor save or wounds or whatever, just don't go for it. Kill everything around that tar pit, and then just hold objectives while that tar pit slowly smashes your face. But it's okay because you've got objectives. Same goes with Kragnos.
You've got the fly high. You've got the board manipulation to engage and move around. So I think that's a really good strategy. It's almost like the Nagash strategy. Don't focus on Nagash if you don't have the tools to take out Nagash. Take out the skeletons and the other hordes that are around him, because Nagash can only score one objective at any given time.
You're still very much the Dark Eldar of Age of Sigmar, using your maneuverability and acting like a scalpel to take out exactly what you need and staying out of your opponent's reach.
Yeah, I think that's the key. That's the key. And, using your shooting in target priority, and I think playing smart as well, like not getting sucked into the opponent's game plan. I think that's critical for KO especially.
Yeah. It is still a bit quite an unforgiving army, because it will fold so quickly. If your ironclad gets surrounded and killed, that's pretty much game over at that point, because you put so many points into the stuff in the ironclad. But so rewarding when it works the way you want it to.
I was going to say it's so rewarding when I pull it down, but that's not the show. I'm gonna be nice, but yeah, like I think overall, I think there was a question that came up to kind of bring us home, but overall, how do we feel about KO right now? I think for me, and I'll let you have the last words, but I don't think it's bad. I think just the way you're building your lists and you're considering how you play in the new edition, because especially, and I keep going back to board size, I found KO would really exploit the large board size, and it was easy to find those little pockets where there was no enemies around, and you could just drop in and drop out and just dance around the table. With the smaller board size, it makes it a little harder, but the lists that I'm seeing aren't taking as many bodies as they used to. The lists that I'm currently seeing, the ones that are doing really well competitively, are putting like 1,500 points, between 1,000 and 1,500 points into heroes, and they're taking very little battle lines. So it actually might work in your favor. But I'll leave it up to you. How do you feel overall? Wrap us up. KO.
Yeah, good but different. Can't play it the way you used to, but if you adapt to this new meta of big god heroes and kill units walking around with just a couple mini screens, you'll do really well.
Yeah. I think my message to people in the past have been: don't look at your second edition list and try to force it into third. Start fresh. Use the experience that you've gained in the past, but like build a brand new third edition list. Because the one thing that I've learned in third edition more important than ever before is the objective isn't nearly as important as it used to be. It used to be about having more bodies to claim the objective, hold it for as long as you could to score those points. Now it's about scoring battle tactics. And
yeah,
you just have to have more. You score more victory points if you have more objectives than your opponent, but you don't have to score all of them. There's none of these things like Scorched Earth where there's 8 objectives on the table. There's you don't have to spread your force out as much. And what's winning and losing games is battle tactics.
And some of them are very easy for KO to do. Say in Mornar, where you can run and shoot in turn 1, that battle tactic where you're running your units near each other, you love it. It's not costing you anything. You're still putting out just as much firepower as you were before. Put 2 units in your opponent's deployment zone. I mean, you've got boats; they're going to jump over. And the thing about garrisons, it says in the KO book they don't count towards scoring, like holding objectives. That's all they don't count towards. So a boat with a unit of Arkanauts in it, that's 2 units. You've got the battle tactic done.
Yeah.
So some of them are still very easy.
Yeah. I mean, some of them are very easy, especially some of the maneuvering ones. Even like things like being able to destroy the opponent's general. You've got the focused fire to be able to do that. So that's going to win you the games. I think for me, it's not just killing your opponent. And as you said as well, the game is won in movement. But this has been a really good first thoughts on KO. And I know you and I could talk for hours. And if you've enjoyed this discussion, know that this is not the only KO show that we'll do. This is a first look at KO. We'll continue to look at KO, and I'll talk to people who are winning tournaments and doing well, and I'll revisit with Krohn, and I'll just ask Krohn, 6 months in, how has this changed? New battle packs are out. What's changed for you? And yeah, I think, because Alpha Beast Pack is one of those battalions that are a part of this battle pack. So the minute we change from the General's Handbook 2021, that's gone. So
yeah.
So what comes next? And I think that's the exciting part of what I'm feeling of third edition.
It's a very exciting future for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, well, it's been great to be on. I'd love to be on any other steampunk dwarf themed episodes.
Well, if people want to hear more from you, you may have a thing that you do, and people could learn more about the Kharadron Overlords.
I mean, if you like this kind of rambling about sky dwarves, we have the Aethercast podcast and channel on YouTube, which is run by a friend of mine, Lee, and Max from England, Germany, and myself, and we just talk about KO and lists and just what we're thinking, how we're doing things, and any weird rules questions that come up. Yeah, just have fun talking about.
They have a weekly show. They talk weekly about Kharadron Overlords. So no other faction in this game enjoys as much content as you lot. So go check out Aethercast. I've had the pleasure of being on your channel once.
We talked about Tempest Eye. It was great.
We did. Yeah, we did. It was a good show. But go check out Aethercast. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Krohn, you are a legend. Everyone says the same thing. Great podcast. It is absolutely live on YouTube's on a Sunday or a Saturday, depending on where you are. But Krohn, thank you for your time. Thank you for talking about Kharadron Overlords. Thank you for giving me some ideas on how you're playing. And it's good to hear that it's not a bad thing for you, third edition. It's just a different way of looking at your army. And I'm looking forward to seeing how people translate this into the tournament scene and really build like what does it look like? What do those next winning lists look like? But Krohn, peace out.
For sure. Catch you all.
Everybody. Thanks for sticking around until the end. I hope you found that video interesting and you walked away with a few new ideas. If you did, I would appreciate it if you hit like on the video, as well as left me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. The conversation will continue over on Discord, so links down below in the episode description if you want to join the Discord and continue the Age of Sigmar conversation. I want to give a massive shout out as well to these absolute bloody legends, these champions who have continued to support me through Patreon or YouTube members. That is going directly into supporting the maintenance and the growth of this channel. So thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. And until next time, roll more sixes.